Public meeting law, filing a notice in the office of the township clerk, posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board, municipal building, December 15, 2011, where it's remained since that date. Legal notice appeared both Daily Record, Star Ledger, forwarded by fax to other local newspapers, local radio stations, December 19, 2011. Note, council meetings are videotaped, aired on Cablevision, Public Access Channel 21, 2 p.m. Sundays, available for viewing, www.parsippany.net. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Here.
Mr. DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Ferrara.
Here.
Mr. Vigilante. Council President Stanton.
Here. Also present, Mayor Barbario, Jasmine Lynn, Business Administrator, John Inglesino, Township Attorney, Yancy Wise-Ziermis, Township Clerk. Please rise for the flag salute. If our 11, 12-year-olds would please start us off.
Hats off, please. United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Upcoming meetings. October 9, 2012, 7:30 p.m. Agenda meeting, public invited, public participation. October 16, 2012, 7:30 p.m. Regular meeting, public invited, public participation. Now, Mayor's presentations.
Start with Models. Are you representing from Models? Name? Nice to meet you. Thank you. I'm going to read a proclamation from the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. As you know, Models was a big sponsor of Parsippany-Troy Little League East, and believe me, it is very appreciated by the township and also the Little League as well. You are a great supporter of the community, and thank you very much. Whereas Modell's Sporting Goods, which has been selling sporting equipment for more than 100 years, has been a mainstay in the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills since 2003, and has demonstrated a corporate social responsibility for giving back to the community it serves. And whereas the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills gratefully acknowledges the efforts and supports of Modell's Sporting Goods in Parsippany for their unwavering commitment to the community, and whereas the generosity of Modell's of Parsippany is duly noted by their donation of $25,000 to Parsippany-Troy Little League East, and for the community spirit they helped generate by selling Mid-Atlantic Champion T-shirts, which they have one of my size. And whereas Modell's has touched and enhanced the citizens of Parsippany-Troy Hills with their random acts of kindness and corporate good neighbor policy. Now therefore, I, James R. Barbario, the Mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby recognize and acknowledge the benevolent contributions made by Modell's Sporting Goods and commend them on their generosity and community spirit, dated this 18th day of September, 2012. Thank you. And the president of Little League as well. And the coaches. Hope you got a wide limbs.
Be together, guys. Love each other all season. Love each other today.
Thank you so much. About to say anything, it's up to you. All right, thank you. Definitely, Mike.
Guys, stay up there, please.
Yep.
Just as a token to show our appreciation for everything that you guys have done for us, which is greatly appreciated. Being on the roads 22 days, you know, expenses add up, and you know, it was just beyond words what you guys really did for this town and our league. We have a jersey we'd like to present to you guys that you can hang in corporate or wear it. And then we have a autograph team photo that was taken up at Lonmy Field for you guys.
Thank you very much.
All right?
Appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. Got it. Oh, thank you.
Is that the bill?
You gentlemen might as well stay up here. It'll be a lot easier. Other side of the table. All right, I'm going to call up Michael Corigliano. Before I read the proclamation, when we were having the motorcade, we didn't have a stage. We didn't know which way to go. Hold up. You're going to come up here. Okay. We had asked him on the spur of the moment. He put everything to the side for us, for the kids, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Proclamation, whereas Michael Corigliano, president of Corigliano Towing, Inc., since 1978, has demonstrated his dedication and commitment to the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills by giving back to the community that he had served. And whereas Corigliano Towing was begun as a family business in 1940 and has since maintained a reputation of honesty, respect, and dedication within the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. Whereas the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills gratefully acknowledges the efforts and support of Michael Corigliano and Corigliano Towing for their unwavering commitment to the community. And whereas the generosity of Michael Corigliano is duly noted by his donation of a hydraulic flatbed trailer that has served as a reviewing stand for the last 34 Memorial Day parades, and providing the trailer to Parsippany Little League East in celebration of their Mid-Atlantic Championship at Venture Park and Little League World Series. Whereas Corigliano Towing, Inc. has touched and enhanced the citizens of Parsippany-Troy Hills with their random acts of kindness and corporate good neighbor policy. Now therefore, I, James R. Barberio, the mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby recognize and acknowledge the benevolent contributions made by Michael Corigliano and Corigliano Towing, Inc., and commend them on their generosity and community spirit. Dated this 18th day of September, 2012.
First of all, I'd like to give you guys congratulations on a great job. Unfortunately, the news said Paramus instead of Parsippany, but we all know who you were, and you guys did a great job, and you guys in your life down the road always hold your head high. I had plans. I don't get to go away much. I had plans to go away racing, stock car, NASCAR racing, and when Jim Walsh and the mayor had asked me if I could do this for him, how can I let you guys down? You guys are the best. And I said, you know what? I said, I can't let these kids down. I can always go to another race. I said, you know what? It's all about the youth and the kids of Parsippany. And I don't want to make this a long speech, but I really want to thank the mayor and all you council people for everything you do for this town. If you go to, I do towing, as you all well know, I have a towing business. I do towing for 4 other towns. And when I'm proud to say I'm a resident of the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, and I'm proud to be a taxpayer in this town. When I go to other towns and see what they have and see what we have here, what the mayor's done and all the council people, whether it's prior council people or whatever, what a great job. The parks, what Mr. Jim Walsh does, Parks and Forestry, Greg Snyder with your sanitation and your road department, it's a great job. You go to other towns, they have nothing compared to what we have. And our taxes are phenomenal compared to what they pay in other taxes. But I can't thank you people enough, and I mean that from my heart. You know what? The word thank you, it seems like it's gone away in this, economy and times. Respect and responsibility. There's some days I say, you know what? It's Memorial Day for Parsippany, 4th of July for Montville, I use the trailer, Labor Day for Boonton, and I no longer have to do Denville Ave, their own thing. There's a lot of work that goes involved. It's not just bring a trailer down. You got to clean everything up, set everything up, make sure it's proper, it looks respectable for my company, as long as the town and the town people and the mayor and the council. And I'm proud to do it. And I don't get myself down because, you know what? I could do like everybody else says, sorry, I can't do it. I'm going away on vacation. But This means a lot to me, and I mean that. Thank every one of you, because you know what? The word thank you is gone, and you people bring it back to me to keep wanting to do this. And I mean this from my heart. Thank you, everybody. And next year, guys, go get them, baby. Coaches and everybody, the parents, everybody that made that possible and sacrificed their time, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. Folks, thank you so much. It means a lot.
Thank you.
ShopRite of Parsippany. Mr. Gladstein. Mr. Hunt. Let me say this before I read this proclamation. Since I've been on the council, all of us council members, and now the mayor, Mr. Gladstein and ShopRite is a great for the PAL or PBA, or police, not PBA. I'm not in PBA, but our police department. And now, at the last spare of the moment, we had the PAL, picnic out there during the concert series, and I spoke to one of the gentlemen, and in the spur of the moment, you came to the rescue, and you were there for the Parts for Little League's young men, and I appreciate that, Mr. Gladstein. Thank you. Proclamation, whereas Parsippany ShopRite has been a mainstay in the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills since 1982, and has demonstrated a corporate social responsibility for giving back to the community it serves. And whereas the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills gratefully acknowledges the efforts and support of ShopRite and Parsippany for their unwavering commitment to the community. And whereas the generosity of ShopRite of Parsippany is duly noted by the generous donations to the Parsippany Food Pantry, the Police Athletic League, and Parts Road Little League East. And whereas ShopRite has touched and enhanced the citizens of Parsippany-Troy Hills through partners in caring and with the random acts of kindness and corporate good neighbor policy. Now therefore, I, James R. Barbera, the mayor of the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby recognize and acknowledge the benevolent contributions made by Parsippany ShopRite and commend them on their generosity dated this 18th day of September 2012. And when I was dating my wife, she worked for ShopRite.
You worked at Pathway.
Here has it. How old are you guys?
Uh-oh. 4 years.
So a few years and like you all come to work, because the team ethic that you guys have demonstrated, is exactly what we want to emulate. And we at ShopRite all congratulate you for everything that you did. I mean, you guys are heroes for all of us, really. Thank you. Frank Splendorio is our store manager in Parsippany. Many of the random acts of kindness are his doing. My daughter Dara is now our 4th generation in this family business. We have a very short saying in our business. Our business is helping people take care of themselves and their families. Parsippany has been very, very good to us, and if we can just return a small portion of that, we have.
No, thank you. And you've done more than that. Thank you. Anyway, as you're closing, I want to thank the young gentleman here. You really made Parsippany-Troy Hills proud. I'm going to tell you a quick little story during the whole Little League World Series, and I probably told this at the motorcade when we had the big motorcade. I don't know who was more intense in my office, my secretaries or myself. But Matty was it? Emil Matty and his mother came in, and I just introduced him to my one secretary, Sabina, and she started crying. She just started crying. I was just like, oh my God, what are you crying for? But that's how excited you guys got Parsippany-Troy Hills. That's how excited you touched. That's how you touched all the hearts, not just my secretaries, but the entire community. And you know what? That doesn't happen that often. So congratulations to all of you. I tip my hat. I don't have it on, but I bow down to you. Thank you so much for being part of Parsippany. Not only that, for keeping the pride in Parsippany alive and well. That's important for Parsippany. You guys must have eaten. You're probably going to a lot of places. Thank you very much. And also the parents, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of. Okay. Oh, yeah, 100%.
It was hot up there.
Yeah, you're melting.
Before we continue the meeting, I'm going to give you guys a chance to get up and run out. Choice is yours. Good move.
It's going to get a lot more boring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only one left is Connie, right?
Just meant the kids.
Squeaked.
I know this chair. Two lights up there. Okay. Okay, Brian, get
Okay.
moving.
Thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, discussions, best practices checklist. Ruby Malcolm.
Good evening. This is the second year that the state of New Jersey has presented.
You have to close the door.
Can't close it.
Close one of them.
We just ask people to kind of keep it quiet.
Or else it'll be quiet in the hall. Just one.
Well, you can't
Just
close.
one, just one.
Can't close both.
You can't because it's got to be open to the public.
Okay.
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 Yancy, close down. So we're gonna leave anyway.
Oh, yeah. Unless it's pouring in.
Okay. At everyone's place, there should be a spreadsheet for the best practices. This is the second year that the state of New Jersey has presented all governmental entities with a series of questions at the end of the year, and it covers like internal control and what are the things that are required and maybe not so required. But they're looking for each town to take more responsibility in their budget and in their financial statements. And so one of the requirements is for the council to review the questions and the answers on this worksheet, because the clerk has to certify that they were reviewed by you. Based our answers, how we answer yes or no, will determine whether we will get our final 5% of state aid for this year. And Jasmine and I have been working on this, and we feel confident that we've met the requirements and that we will not be penalized for any of our state aid. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Just a comment, if I may. Some of the questions seemed ambiguous. I know you've tried to clarify it in your response, your remarks, but I think some of the questions are ridiculous and some are ambiguous. For the record.
A lot of the questions are asking us if we do things that are, number one, not required, and we also never were told in the beginning of the year that these questions were going to come up. So we didn't even have an opportunity to really implement them. I think that what the state is doing is they're trying to find a way not to fund that last 5% of state aid. But I don't think that we're in jeopardy of that.
And next year, if we follow this guideline, they'll probably change the questions and make
They
new
will
ones anyway.
undoubtedly,
So it
because
doesn't
these
matter.
questions are different than the questions last year. Many of them are.
questions, anyone?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yancy, do you need a verbal response from us tonight? No? Okay.
Okay, bids to be taken. September 27, 2012, 10 a.m. Sealed proposals for replacement, accessible ramp at the sewage treatment plant. September 27, 2012, 11 a.m. Sealed proposals for roof replacement at the sewage treatment plant. October 4, 2012, 11 a.m. Operation of Pro Shops, provision of golf professional related services and Knoll Country Club. Okay, ordinances, 2012:33, Mr. DiPiero.
The foregoing ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on July 23, 2012. Be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Chapter 405, Vehicles and Traffic, Section 29, Bus Stops of the Code of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Morris County, New Jersey, be read in title only on second reading and a hearing held thereon.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Vigilante. At this time, I'd like to open this ordinance up to the public, and only this ordinance will be given 3 minutes to speak. Seeing no one come forward, I'd like to close this. Mr. DiPiero.
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Vigilante. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. 2012:34, Mr. Farrar.
The foregoing ordinance number 2012:34. The foregoing ordinance was published in its entirety in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, on July 23, 2012. Be it resolved that the ordinance entitled an ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hill in the County of Morris, New Jersey, approving table of organization of the Parsippany-Troy Hills Police Department, be read in title only on the second reading and hearing held thereon.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. DiPiero. At this time, I'd like to open this ordinance up to the public, only this ordinance. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
3 minutes?
Yep. You might only get 5.
Yeah, I know.
Jerry Manning, Rainbow Lakes. I'm just going to repeat what I had to say the last time this ordinance came up for a vote. I disagree with the whole concept. I don't know why we're wasting time of the council and taking votes and passing ordinances to change a police table of organization that's been in effect for who knows. I think we should just leave it alone. The argument that right now we only have 2 or 3 captains, the budget doesn't allow us to do more. If the economy picks up and we need more police, we're going to be back here again looking to add another captain. So why don't we just leave it alone? The only thing this is going to do, excuse me, it's not a good time. Anyway, the only thing this is going to do, that in the event we need to appoint a deputy or a chief, if we only have 3, we leave ourselves wide open to litigation, because the 3 would be a choice of pick. If we leave it at 4, there has to be a test. Takes away all the possibility of liability of a lawsuit. Thank you.
See no one else come forward, I'd like to close the open public. Mr. Farrar.
Whereas the above ordinance was read on the title on second reading and hearing held thereon, now therefore be resolved that the said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a final passage in said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. DiPiero. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Abstain.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
No.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes.
Final roll call is 3 yes, 1 abstain, 1 no. Motion passes.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open this up to the public. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak. Seeing no one come forward, I'd like to close the public session. Consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine, non-controversial by the Township Council, will be approved by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda, considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Motion by myself.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
I have to abstain, I wasn't here.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Ordinances for introduction, 2012:35. Mr. Karifi.
Ordinance number 2012:35, an ordinance of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills in the County of Morris, New Jersey, authorizing the acquisition by purchase of properties located within the township through FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. Be it resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading at a meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills held on September 18th, 2012, and that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on October 16th, 2012, at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time, or as soon as thereafter as the matter may be reached, at the municipal building in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance.
Second.
Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Karifi, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Add-on number 1, Mr. DiPiero, please, by title only.
Motion to approve award of contract for reconstruction of curbs and sidewalks at various locations.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DiPiero, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Add-on number 2, Mr. Farrar.
Motion to confirm the appointment of Township Public Defender and award a contract for a professional service.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. DiPiero. Roll call.
You want to comment first?
Yeah, I want to make a comment.
Okay.
I just want to make you aware that Matthew Young, Esquire, his mother will be very proud, and his mother is Jasmine Lim, just so for the record.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Vigilante.
Affirmative.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes. Now take the ultimate motion.
Hold on. Hold on.
Discussion.
No, not on that.
Yes. Going back to, I have a question for the attorney. We kind of didn't comment on this last time about the displacement reimbursement to the tenants if they get displaced by the ordinance. Counselor, I have a question. And thank you for working on the last ordinance. I kind of came in the middle of that, but again, I was one of the council members that voted on the first ordinance, and maybe I don't remember, but I don't remember that part of it about the displacement. Shame on me. Is there anything that we could do? We have about 4 families getting ready to get evicted this month. I understand you have the introduction, you have the adoption. It takes at least a 4 to 6 weeks period, especially when you're doing 2 weeks, 2 times a month. Is there anything legally that we could do to suspend that ordinance until we come up with one that's more definitive, not so ambiguous, in at least that respect? The ordinance in itself and its body that we passed years ago has done a great job with stacking. I know there's people out there that don't think so, and I'll disagree with you all day long. I used to have an exterminating business. I saw what these apartments were like. They're almost 70% better. Still got a long way to go, but we made some great strides. Single-family homes, that's going to be another issue. So, you know, for anybody that says that stacking ordinance doesn't work, I'll disagree all day long. But going back to what I asked, is there anything legally that we could do to suspend that ordinance so these families that are being affected by it do not get evicted by the end of this month?
The answer is to pass another ordinance. An ordinance is the law of the municipality, and the administration is duty-bound to enforce the law. The only way to make a law ineffective is to change it by ordinance. What we had proposed was admittedly not a perfect solution, but it was one that, under the circumstances, we felt was the most appropriate to provide a potential remedy to some of the families that are being displaced that perhaps really weren't intended to be included among those people who would be displaced by the ordinance. And again, circumstances changed. I mean, what's happened now since the last ordinance was passed is that you've had a very significant downturn in the economy. You have, 9.8% unemployment in the state. And so, that's put a lot of financial pressure on folks. Maybe that wasn't the case when the original ordinance was passed. So now it appears as though you're having classifications of folks who are being, I'll use the word victimized, but who are included in the ordinance, who perhaps weren't foreseen to be intended to at the time it was passed. So what we had proposed was really the only legal mechanism that I think works, which is to change the ordinance. The intent would be on an interim basis to provide for a waiver mechanism and then work with all of the stakeholders to find a permanent solution. Some of the stakeholders obviously are the council. So one of the things that we would have envisioned would have happened as a step after the interim ordinance was passed was to form some sort of a subcommittee so that we could get policy direction on what to do, and also to interface with some of the other stakeholders, which would be the apartment owners, perhaps some tenant groups, whoever those stakeholders are, identify them, interface with them, sort of crystallize the issues of today, and how and discuss how the ordinance could be changed on a permanent basis to address those issues. That was the game plan, but I take my direction from the council. So when the ordinance was not introduced, there is no other mechanism legally, to address the issue of the displacement of these families, because the law of the town is the law of the town, and the administration and the mayor is duty-bound to enforce it, whatever it is, unless and until it is in some way changed. So the way to deal with it is to change the ordinance and to say, you're going to change it on an interim basis until a more permanent solution can be found. Absent that, then the ordinance that's in effect now needs to be enforced.
I did notice one circumstance where one of the families was given till the end of the month. Now they're being given till the end of their lease. Can we do something as a council to put that into effect until we make the change, or no?
I'm not aware of that particular situation, so I'd have to speak with the administration on that. But the ordinance really doesn't specify as to, that would be not an issue exactly when the eviction would occur. Is not something that would be specified in the ordinance.
I understand there's an ordinance, I understand there's a law, and I'm not encouraging anybody to break a law or break an ordinance, but maybe it's something that doesn't need to be enforced at this very moment. You're talking about families' lives and children. And granted, what was proposed to us, or what you drew up for us to vote on, we all thought was good intent, and some good citizens we had out there brought the possibility of some potential loopholes, some litigation down the road, and that's why we never voted it or never seconded at that time. I don't know. I'm looking for input from the rest of the council, because this is not going to go away.
I'm waiting for my turn to speak.
What's that?
I'm waiting for my turn to speak.
We did not we did not receive, at least to my knowledge and my recollection, any threats of litigation over the ordinance that was proposed at all.
The ordinance itself, I meant the fact that with the waiver policy, that's what
But we did not receive, to my recollection or knowledge, any threats of litigation on the waiver provision in the ordinance. I think there were
Obviously, there were questions, but we didn't receive any direct threats of litigation if that ordinance was passed. Again, any law that affects people isn't necessarily going to be supported by everybody because the world just doesn't work that way. But it was the only way that we could come up with, and that would provide some short-term relief to those that are being affected that perhaps are not intended to be affected, and provide an opportunity to come up with a longer-term solution. But no, Councilman Vigilante, we can't just say that we're going to suspend the ordinance as it relates to some people who would be affected by the ordinance and selectively enforce it against others. That would open the town up to litigation, and I would strongly recommend against that.
Thank you.
If I may, when we were bringing up that ordinance, I had voted no. And, I do agree with you in somewhat, Jim, that the ordinance is working, but to me, 70% is not good enough. I'd like to have 100%. Some of the particular issues that, some of these couples are dealing with where they have a 6-month-old baby, it's a couple that just started off a family having a 6-month-old baby. I think that's different. Me personally, I don't have a problem with a 6-month-old baby. But I know in talking to police, fire, EMS in town, we do still have stacking issues where there's 4 or 5 adults living in 1-bedroom apartments. And, that's the thing that needs to be addressed. Somebody with a 6-month-old baby, you give them to the end of the lease to look for somewhere else to go. Me personally, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But as far as with what was drawn up with the waiver process, like I stated before, it opened up a can of worms, too many different possibilities to add to our stacking problem. And I think that it would have to be specific to maybe, again, like, someone that just has a newborn baby, okay, you're not evicting them, but there are still apartments, there are still houses out there that definitely are stacking.
Well, the waiver, Councilman Boyd addressed that. One of the concepts in the waiver provision was to make that demarcation not necessarily on age, but one of the factors that could be taken into account in terms of the waivers would be number of people who would be in the unit who would be of age eligible to drive. Because clearly one of the impacts of stacking from a health, safety, and welfare perspective is on parking. And these many of these apartment complexes were not designed to handle, cars for 4 or 5 adults in a 1-bedroom apartment. Clearly, if a demonstration can be made that there were infant children, 6-month-old, 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever, clearly that would be a factor that would be taken into consideration in granting the waiver. Again, not a perfect solution. We didn't intend it to be a perfect solution, but it would merely have been an interim solution so that a more perfect, permanent solution could have been achieved, and to give some of these families at least some breathing room while that process occurred, because as Councilman Vigilante pointed out, the clock is ticking on those that are being evicted, and so the concept was get some immediate relief, not perfect, and come up with a more perfect situation. I can't predict whether lawsuits would have been filed or not. We didn't get threats. My guess is that the lawsuits probably would have waited for a more permanent solution, as long as a permanent solution was forthcoming within a reasonable period of time. But that's just a guess on my part.
Can we do, Mr. Angelsino, can we do something like an age? I think you mentioned that last I misunderstood, like up to a 6-year-old. It's not considered something right in the.
Well, again,
and I have 2 points. I'm sorry. This way you could answer them at the same time. And maybe if we need to give a waiver, then those people should come in front of this council, and we'll decide case by case. Is that possible?
I wouldn't recommend that the council
Okay.
decide on waivers. That's really not the council's role. The council's role is to set policy and the laws, and then those laws are administrated by your administrative folks. I wouldn't recommend that the council grant the waivers. Age in and of itself presents certain problems, because then you're going to hear from folks who are disabled. It says that they're not able to drive, so why shouldn't they be there? So I think that the concept was that you would have the waiver provisions in there in a way that really could be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, using the policy guidelines that were in the waivers to make individual determinations, again, on an interim basis. I'm not saying that's a perfect permanent solution, but it really, I think, was the best solution and the only viable solution that we could come up with to deal with the immediate issue. The longer-term solution would really be the product of what we envision would be stakeholder meetings to set policy that my office would then turn into the law. But you know, those are discussions and meetings and thoughts that have to occur over a period of time.
I have another question, but Councilman DiPiero, your input, please, first.
Well, my objection to the waiver process was that there are too many variables. We have 7,000 apartments in Parsippany. And if you grant one waiver and you don't grant the next one, whether it be the race card or be a religion card or be a handicap card or whatever issue, okay, I could see a plethora of lawsuits coming down the pike because you can't distinguish. The 7,000 apartments is the number of variables that could come forward. We could never plan for and put everything in the ordinance, anticipate what could happen. So the waiver, in my opinion, was not a good solution. It would have turned into a nightmare, a legal and a financial nightmare. Now, that's my objection to the waiver. Mr. Nelson in the back on Patch recommended we modify the ordinance to put a two-year-olds and under, you know, would be waived. But one of the people being ejected already has a 4-year-old, so that's not going to help them anyway. So no matter what and I don't think, I absolutely feel we should try, but no matter what we anticipate and put into an ordinance, with 7,000 apartments, we can't possibly consider every variable that could come forward and meet all of those needs. But we need to do something, but I don't believe the waiver was the way to go.
One of the other things that, you know, people talk about, what age do we stop at? Here would be my concern. Let's say we pick 7, 8 years old, even 10 or 12, whatever it may be. And again, from my experience, I've seen people where they got their cousins come to live with them because they want to go to this school system. You know, I don't know. I think we need to put this on the agenda to have more discussion. Unfortunately, and these folks are going to be affected by it, but it's something that's not going to go away, and we have to address it. And again, as Mr. DiPiero said, I don't know if we're going to be able to be inclusive of trying to figure out everything out, but we have to come up with something.
Yeah.
You know, and again, going back to the age, where do we come up with? Like we say, 6, 7, 8, and then if you get into the school age, like I said, then you're going to have folks that might have their cousins or friends come to live with them just to go to the school system.
Yeah, then we're burdening.
That doesn't mean
the
that's
school
not
system.
happening right now, though. I'm
Exactly.
sorry, Mr. Karifi.
Correct.
No, that's
To cut you off.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not happening.
If I may just say, you know, when you said a certain age or whatever, you know, most leases are a year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a year. So if somebody knows, okay, we're starting a family, and now that kind of gives you, you know, if you said, okay, a year, up to a year, that gives you a year now. That family knows, okay, we have a year here in this apartment, and then we're going to need to move on. Because if you, like you said, if you start getting into 7, 8-year-olds, you're getting these kids into schools, and now we're going to burden our school system, because I feel that's going on now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's, again, that affects all of us here that live in town, our taxes.
I'm sorry.
My problem is we have an ordinance now that's telling a family with a 6-month-old, you're violating our ordinance, you have till the end of the month. And I don't know who put the ordinance in place, and I don't care. That's not right. A 6-month-old child.
Well, again, the way to change it is the way that we suggested, and the factors, whether they go into the waiver or they go into some more permanent solution, legally have to be rooted in health, safety, and welfare kind of determinations. To make arbitrary decisions based upon an age, I think, invites the kind of litigation that you want to avoid. The factors and the ways in which you can build in potentially exceptions, if you will, have to be rooted on no impact or adverse impact to health, safety, and welfare related issues. Parking is the classic example. And that's where age might be, the one exception where age might be, 17 and older, because there you have people living there who are eligible to park, and these facilities cannot possibly handle that kind of influx in cars. So that is a health, safety, and welfare related reason. But those are the kinds of reasons that you would have to find, and frankly, without really digging into it with all of the stakeholders and doing the best we can to come up with all of the potential exceptions, as Councilman DePiero pointed out, very, very difficult to do. Again, putting the factors in place that would be considered for a waiver on a case-by-case basis is really the only way to do it on an interim basis. But that doesn't mean you can't move forward with identifying stakeholders and having meetings to try to find a more permanent solution to change the ordinance. You can certainly continue on and do that process, and we're more than happy to work with you in doing that. It's just that during that interim basis, the ordinance that is in effect now is the one that would have to be enforced.
Okay, from the article I read, the one family that came here, they've now been given till April, which is their lease end. And by them giving till April, now the town's not liable for that 6 month to move in the cost. Now you have this 6 month at the one family. If they're told in 3 months their lease doesn't end till December, are we liable for 6 months?
I have to, I'll review that on a
Well, our ordinance reads that the landlord is responsible
We could go after.
to
We're
relocate
liable,
them.
We could go after.
If he doesn't pay on time, we can go after, we put it out and go after him later.
You front the money and get reimbursed is the
But
way
the
it
bottom
works.
line is the landlord is responsible for relocation, not the township.
That's correct, but you would have to front the money, so there's cash flow, there's a lot of issues involved in that, and that's state law in addition to your ordinance, which, so, that's the way that works.
And that's being said, most landlords probably are not going to live up to the ordinance, and then we're going to have to reimburse, and then we have to
100%.
spend
And
money
you
to go
sue
after them.
to get their money back.
I guess what I want to say is, so we don't stay all night debating this back and forth, is the council in agreement that we need to, because it came off the agenda, we didn't mention it much last week. Are we all in agreement that we have to do something and maybe put something
It
back?
needs to be changed.
We can
I don't
fine
agree
tune,
with
I
this.
agree we should fine tune it. And there were some comments on patch, some of them, the comments were worthless, but some of them were worth considering. For instance, one of them pointed out that Rena Plax measured the square footage on one apartment and the resident was 20 square feet too small. Well, let's consider things like that make it a little more reasonable. How can, these different complexes were built and the rooms are not exactly the same size in all these different apartment complexes, but we should tailor our ordinance so that a one bedroom or a two bedroom, the sizes are consistent in our ordinance, to consider that different apartments have different sized rooms.
One of the other issues you have here is the two-bedroom availability in this town, out of the 7,000 units that you talk about, Mr. DiPiero, compared to the single. And again, I'm going by the apartment complex I grew up in. There's probably out of 225 units, there's probably about 30% that have two bedrooms. Every else is a single bedroom. There's only one complex in this town, or actually two complexes in this town, that have 3 bedrooms. And that's very rare, and they got maybe 2 digits, it's not like it's 100.
We're talking about the size, in that
Right.
article, talking about the size of the rooms.
No, I know, I'm just talking about that in general. But again, I guess we want to enforce the stacking. We all agree we don't want multiple, families living in an apartment or a house for that matter.
We don't want abuses.
But we don't want to punish somebody just because they had a baby. Or even if they have a baby, we don't want to punish them because that baby, whatever age that if we do go that way, it's not easy for people to move out of an apartment, for financial reasons. They may not be able to afford a house or move or can't get a 2-bedroom.
Councilman, can I say, you hit right there. Should we say, if you have a baby, you got 5 years, you got 3 years? When that
Well,
baby
those are the kinds of
turns,
things
you know
we
what I'm
should-
saying?
Well, I think what
Oh,
may
you
be
can't?
appropriate.
We can. We were told not to.
I think what may be appropriate is to perhaps set up a subcommittee of the council, which we could meet with and kind of discuss,
I would
policy
volunteer.
issues. And then identify, once you've formulated some ideas, maybe report back, to the council, so the council's all on the same page, and then we could identify some of the other stakeholders in the community, and go from there. That might be at least a way, a
If I
process to
may
do
add
that.
one thing, I think one thing we have to recognize is stop saying that a family with one child in an apartment is stacking. You know, we really know that's not stacking.
No, I agree.
I mean, but that's what you're hearing tonight. Well, stacking here. That's not stacking.
Agreed.
Okay, and what we don't want to do is sit here now. And Mr. DePiero makes a great point. Well, what do you do if you say, okay, up to 2 years old? Well, happy third birthday, you're gone. You have to leave. And these are the things we have to consider. But as to, and that was one of the big scares. This was stacking. If we let them stay, we give them a waiver, opens up a Pandora's box to stacking. It doesn't. A family with one child in a one-bedroom apartment, we have to determine. That's one thing we have to determine as a council and the administration. Is that stacking? No, it's not stacking. But having that in the ordinance, what we had was a time period a guest could stay, which made the ordinance stricter on stacking. And you're going to have, and I think that's something you're going to have to even also put into the ordinance. Huh?
That
Well, no,
wasn't one of the parts that we were removing.
it doesn't
Well, no,
matter.
it
Once
didn't
you
get
table
passed, so it didn't
Okay.
get in.
Yeah,
Okay.
once it passed, because
Well, we
now
were gonna put
a
together
guest
all
can
of it.
stay. A guest can come and stay on unlimited amount of time.
Okay.
Well, you had a 2-month period; they can only stay for 2 months, and then the onus would lie on the landlord. And that's another thing we got to look at. Who do we put the onus on? Well, we got to make the landlords more, responsible. I've spoken to many police officers, and I speak to the chief. I speak to some of the fire districts. One-bedroom apartments, they would all it's not stacking, and that's one thing we need to determine. That's what we have to concentrate on. Is there stacking in Parsippany? I'd be a fool to tell you there isn't. So, but we fight it on a daily basis. That's what I can tell you. But the fact is this: you make a good point, Councilman Vigilante. Do you want to be the town known as kicking people out of their apartments with little babies? You don't want to be that. So we need to find a solution, and a fair solution.
Would this council be objective at the next meeting to reintroducing the ordinance that was already provided to us with the waivers? And as the counselor kept referring back to, until we come up with a better solution, because I don't think, the subcommittee is a great idea. I'd volunteer with it, or I'm sure we'd get enough volunteers for it. But until that, we still have to address this issue. And we know that even putting committees together, trying to get, as you call the principals or the stakeholders, that's going to take a while. In the meantime, families, I'm sure these aren't the only, I'm sure there's more pregnant people in these apartments that are going to be having babies, and it's going to be getting worse and worse. So I personally don't have a problem with reintroducing that ordinance at the next meeting. I know it's a work session, and so we can speed up that process of what was already done, and as he said, as an interim solution until we figure it out. And again, the waivers would
I
be...
strongly advise against it.
So do I. I think we should come up with the solution to get it right the first time, rather than Band-Aiding it until we can get it right. Let's try to get it done as soon as possible.
I'm going to ask one question. What happens with the 6-month-old child that was given 30 days?
We have
we
to
don't
follow.
meet for 30 days.
We have to follow the
You
law.
have to follow the laws that exist.
And they're going to be removed from
You
the
have to
house
follow
in
the law
meantime.
as it exists. I mean,
Don't
that's the
forget
law's
that.
the law.
That's why I'm suggesting maybe we revisit that ordinance. Again, it's not, if we introduce the ordinance, it gets passed in October, November, and then in December, January, the council at that time comes up with a permanent solution. They've done the research. They didn't rush it. Meanwhile, we're not affecting the people that are having these babies.
If we
Otherwise,
do go to the waiver system, I know we're not going to be the ones making the decision. Can we have 1 or 2 councilmen on that?
What you will have is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor. The Director of Planning, Zoning, and Construction, she would be part of the process of the waiver, based on our codes and our laws. And she will, like for instance, and this is where I will adhere to you, Counselor, but she will determine that if the waiver is to go through, how detrimental it would be to the town. Probably not too detrimental.
And obviously, that would be done in consultation with our office as
Right.
well. I don't foresee, a plethora of litigation as a result of that ordinance, particularly if it's done on an interim basis, but I don't foresee that. I may be wrong, but I don't foresee that.
I'm not talking about reintroduce this ordinance as the cure-all, just something temporary, so we're not throwing these people out that are having babies or have kids that are in that, adolescence age. I agree with Mr. DiPiero. The waiver thing could maybe open up some avenues there, but until we come up with a more permanent solution, I personally would be in favor of reintroducing that ordinance in the next meeting. That's just my thoughts. Otherwise, I just think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And how are you going to tell people coming around the holiday time that you're going to have to get out of their apartment and get evicted? I'm not comfortable.
This is not a brand, no, the township ordinance on stacking is not brand new. It's been in effect for, what, 5 years now? This is not brand new. We're yelling about doing something on the interim. We've been enforcing this as best we can for 5 years.
But not this part of it.
And the intent of it is to prevent abuses. That's the intent, to prevent abuses. Now, we can modify it, but I don't think the waiver is the way to go.
You guys, let me ask you this question.
I'm in favor of whatever's going to happen to keep a 6-month-old in their house.
Is there a way that if we take the waiver out of that ordinance and just say for now, make 3 years old the number? You know, in the meantime.
Temporary.
Again, this is probably only something that's going to be in effect for a few months, but at least it's going to protect those folks, or protect people that are having babies.
If you want it, rather than a waiver process, if you want to introduce an ordinance that modifies our stacking ordinance to set a limit of children below 3 years of age will not be included in head count, okay? We can do that without implementing a waiver process.
Wouldn't that
That would be the interim.
Then I think you've got some potential legal. Then
Could
I'm
we-
concerned legally.
Could we
I mean,
have it to where?
Why would that produce legal?
Because anybody
problems?
3 and up, they have
Well,
children.
because how do you how do you distinguish between a child who's 3 years old versus a child who's 3 years and 1 month old? What is the nexus?
Well, no matter what age you set, that's going to happen.
Well, that's not true, because you have, at a point, you have nexuses between, again, it all has to be tied back to health, safety, and welfare. And what I think is and that's what the waiver process enables the administration to do, is to evaluate these on the basis of impact to health, safety, and welfare. And if you put an age like 2 years old or 3 years old as a hard and fast rule, I think you are opening yourself up to challenge by that parent of that child who's 3 years and 1 month old. How do you defend that on the basis of health, safety, and welfare in court? I don't think, I think that's a very difficult chance. So that what the waiver provision does do, in my opinion, is helps you tailor the waiver and relate it back to health, safety, and welfare concerns. And in my opinion, that better protects the municipality from litigation.
I have a question for you, Counselor. I understand the concerns of the council about the waiver. So, if what you just said, so for example, if we're going to do something for the interim, if we want to put something in and introduce it at the next meeting until we come up with a more concrete solution. So if we just, let's say we make it 16 for now. According to what you're just saying, that would give us, would be less likely to be sued at that point, or have litigation at that point, because that would be a health.
Well, I gave that example, in some ways to make the point, in a way that I think, makes sense to people, to illustrate the point. I think that perhaps the way to do it is to talk with some folks offline, or maybe it's a subcommittee, and that can be done quickly, to address some of the concerns that Councilman DePiero has, and maybe some others, so that maybe we were able to craft a better interim solution. But you're not going to craft a long-term, permanent, nothing's permanent, but long-term solution with all the stakeholders involved in time to alleviate the hardship on these families that are being affected right now, because there just isn't time to do that.
Could we put in that they would be able to stay until their lease is up? Their lease is up?
As an interim.
As an interim? This way, there's no waiver, we're not dealing with waivers and this and that. It's just, okay, once your lease is up, so now these people at least know, okay, I have 4 months left, I have 6 months left, I have 8 months left. Your lease is up, you're now in violation of the ordinance, so you're going to have to leave.
Lease up or permanent solution, whichever one comes first.
Would that be a viable solution?
In and of itself, I don't believe it would be. But again,
on an interim basis?
I don't believe it would be in and of itself. But again, I'd be happy to sit with the subcommittee and further discuss this.
A 6-month-old from being thrown out.
And maybe it's going to be a more in-depth understanding and review of exactly what the waiver process would entail. Perhaps that might make some folks feel more comfortable. If not, fine. But again, if you want to appoint a subcommittee to look into these issues in much more detail, we'd be happy to do that.
I'll put the committee together, but I'm gonna say now, I want to meet immediate.
I'd like to I'll volunteer to be on that committee.
How about
And
Mr.
same thing, I can
DiPiero,
like
Mr.
pick
DiPiero,
too,
Mr.
so.
Karifi? I mean, Mr. DiPiero's got a lot, you know, he's done quite a lot, extensive research on this,
I'll
the
put
past
I'll
one.
put the
And he was on the
committee
council
together.
for, I mean, I'm not, sorry,
I
Mike,
know.
I'm not trying to
Did you hear
volunteer.
that?
I'll put the committee.
Did you hear that?
together.
He volunteered you.
I don't want any volunteers. I'll put the committee together.
Oh, okay.
I just would like that, our next meeting's October 9th. I'd like us to have an ordinance introduced that night to protect these folks, at least for now,
Well,
until
we're
we
gonna
get them.
have the subcommittee meeting well
Okay.
before then. So.
Great, thank you.
I'm not done yet, Count.
Okay.
I have a question, I guess, the first one, and I promise you it's not going to take that long. 2 minutes. I guess this is to the council and the administration. As you all know, Joe Medwin passed away quite a while. I believe he was a committeeman, or whatever the word is,
Councilman.
Mayor?
He
Councilman?
was a committee man.
Oh, committeeman?
Yeah.
But there was no council at the time, correct? They were considered council people, or whatever you call it, right?
They were, prior to us going to the Faulkner
Right.
planning, we had a committee,
Right.
and he was a committee man.
My question is, I believe from what I learned and what I hear, the gentleman did a lot of service for the community. Does his name deserve to go on the wall in this building or somewhere, or
He'll
not?
go up the wall to over here.
Well, can we take some action? Can we do something? Is it us? Is it you, Mayor?
Well,
or
you
do
direct me and I'll do it.
I'm directing you to do
Okay.
something.
We have a standing policy that any
I have spoke to Mr. Medwin's brother
Okay.
about putting a
any
plaque on the
past
wall.
elected official goes up on that wall over
Right.
there, outside these
Can we
doors.
do something?
I have no desire for my name to go on that
Does
wall for
anybody
a
have
while.
a problem with that? Is everybody in
The
agreement?
week after, and it was agreed upon.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can we do something, Mayor?
Sure.
And the final question, I guess, is to the attorney. If I say something wrong, Mr. Attorney, please correct me. You weren't here last week. There was a question brought up last week during the meeting, something about lawsuits against the town or something like that. We as council people, or myself, can we get some type of a list of people that are suing this town? Is that my right?
Well, yeah, it sure is. You're right. What I can do is prepare a list of active lawsuits. My office is not representing the municipality in all of those lawsuits. Some of those are handled by the insurance company, and in fact, the majority of them probably are. Some of them are administrative actions, but litigation nonetheless. They're being handled by special labor counsel. But I can put together that list with a brief caption of what the lawsuits are about. And that's certainly public information, because any lawsuit that's filed is public information. There's a complaint, there's an answer, and there's public documents that are filed. So at least that'll give you a snapshot of what the litigation picture is in Parsippany-Troy Hills.
Thank you very much. I'll make the ultimate motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferrara, second by Mr. Vigilante. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Vigilante. Mr. Stanton.
Everybody have a good night.
Yeah, be careful, don't fall away.